Welcome back to the Six Hockey Post-Draft Show. Thomas West alongside Liam Crothers. The Sudbury Wolves are the topic of interest today. And we'll start off this show by saying, well, it was a really interesting draft because it was the first time we've seen a draft lottery in the OHL. The Sudbury Wolves weren't necessarily the worst team in the OHL. They were kind of a mid-pack team. They won the lottery. They took Quentin Musty, but they had an opportunity to pick some good players.
Yeah, and they got the guy that they wanted right off the top, the first overall pick. They had announced it even before the draft had started. That's how confident they were. But you can't just draft one player when draft time comes around. So in the OHL priority selection, they delved into the GTHL a little bit, and they explored their options, took some different players.
Yeah, not one of the top teams delving into the GTHL, but they did take a couple players, so we take a look at them right now. The first one they selected was in the 5th round, Michael Durbridge. This is a guy who, he's got some size. He can certainly put the puck in the back of the net.
Yeah, and we didn't get the opportunity to see Derbidge because he spent the 2019-20 season with York Simcoe. He was going to be moving to the Toronto Nationals, but at 6'1", 186 pounds, 53 points in 41 games, I think is very impressive, especially for a 5th-round pick.
Yeah, and I wish we actually got to see this guy play a little bit more because he did have the ability to put the puck in the net, something that's always fun to see. As we move on to our next pick right now, Brock Cummins was the guy. He played quite a few games with the Rebels. He was a strong player with them.
Yeah, and when you get into the 11th round, you're not expecting to find a ton of players that are going to play right away. I think Brock Cummins at 6'1" and 178 pounds is a player probably for the future, and 16 points in 35 games on the Mississauga Rebels in 2019-20, I think points to that pretty clearly. He's not going to be a player that is inserted into the lineup right away, but that being said, he might be a piece for the future moving forward. He's got a decent skill set to improve upon as OHL talent is put around him, and the coaching staff is able to develop him as well.
Yeah, you get drafted, you have a shot. You have a shot to work your way up. One thing I think that we need to consider as well is these guys are still really young, right? If they didn't put up a ton of numbers in the GTHL, there's a lot of room for improvement. And there's a lot of time still before they, move on to the NHL, which is probably what they're trying to make after the OHL. We take a look at our next pick right now. This is Luke Ranieri, another guy that I think is probably a project for the future, but a guy with some upside for sure.
Yeah, and the limited numbers are obvious. 2 points in 23 games for the Mississauga Senators. Not one of the better teams in the GTHL, but that being said, as you'd mentioned, a project for the future. When you get into the 14th round, at 279, you're not expecting a player like a Quentin Musty that you took first overall. You're expecting a player that maybe in 2 to 3 years or after a bit of seasoning and maybe the OJHL and a lower level below major junior hockey, a player that can contribute.
Yeah, so we'll see how these guys can progress their years and move on with their goal of making the OHL and the Sudbury Wolves. We appreciate you tuning in to the Six Hockey Post-Draft Show from Thomas West and Liam Crothers. We'll see you next time.